Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm working on my Santosha quilt. We are
Oh, nice.
talking button.
Hi, Susan.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Nice to get to see you multiple days in a row.
Yeah, you too. I'll mute myself now.
Um, just out of curiosity, um, I know what kind of buttonhole foot you have, Roxanne. I know your machine. Brenda, do you know what kind of buttonhole foot you have on your machine?
I've got the Bernina one, the one
Uh-huh.
that in kind of program.
Yep. So do you have like this one?
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
sorry. That one.
Yeah, that's exactly the one I
Yeah.
have.
Sorry. I always get confused about where the camera is. Okay. I just want to tailor because I feel like there's three different kinds of buttonhole feet, and so if it doesn't apply to folks, then I'll just skip one of them. Susan, do you know what kind of buttonhole foot you have for your machine or what machine you're working on?
I have a Singer and
Mhm.
it's pretty old, like maybe 30 years old.
Mhm.
So I've never used the function at all.
Okay.
So I'm gonna have to
Uh,
look around and see what pieces
okay.
are there. Yeah.
It might be like I mean, it might be like a four-step buttonhole. Maybe it might be a,
Yes, that rings a bell. That
okay.
you have to go through 4 steps.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty common for those older machines for sure. I actually thought we would have more people who had the um sort of the other one-step buttonhole foot, which is why I put the Burnett machine up top because there are a few folks who had that machine who were interested in learning the buttonholes. So it's a short one tonight, so I don't really want to dawdle too much um on waiting for folks. So I might just kind of just start talking a little bit and then hopefully a few more people join in, and if not we'll just keep going and there'll be a record. Oh, there's Kelly. Hey Kelly,
Hi,
how are you?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Good.
Nice
Um,
to see you.
nice to see you. I was just curious. I can't remember. You have the is this the machine that you have? No, you have a Burnett?
No, I have a singer.
You have a Singer. Okay, great. And what's your do you know what kind of style buttonhole foot you have on yours?
It's like a clear thing that you can put the button in to get the
Okay.
size.
Okay, great. So that's kind of that's kind of what I thought I would start with because I think I thought that that was what most people, that's a more common. So it kind of looks like a,
Yes.
yeah, like that.
Yes.
Here.
Mine is
Um,
just transparent.
yeah, so same idea though. It's just kind of this like larger, longer foot that goes on the machine. And it has like a little spot to put the button in the back.
Yeah.
So what's nice
Thank
about
you.
what's nice about this style of buttonhole foot is it kind of does the measuring for you. So this little piece here at the back that holds the button, you just kind of like open it up and then you can kind of just whatever size button you have, you just kind of pop it into this little spot here, and then you just kind of close it against the button. One of the things that I usually find with this little foot is that it usually does a pretty tight really a pretty tight buttonhole. So oftentimes when I put my button in here, I'll just actually kind of open it back up like one or two sort of clicks, just so it's like not super pressing against it. That'll just kind of give you a slightly bigger, longer buttonhole. I usually find that that works, but I would always recommend just doing a quick little test, on some scrap fabric before you do your buttonhole on your project. But the good thing is that once this buttonhole, if this is the right setting, when you do your buttonhole, it will do the same size buttonhole over and over again. So the other nice thing about this particular foot is it does give you a consistent buttonhole. So it's going to give you the same one over and over again once you determine that it's the right setting. So with my button in here, like I said, you kind of close it against the actual button, and then I usually just kind of push it back open, just like it kind of has like these little clicks. I just kind of push it back open like one or two clicks. And that just gives it like a little bit of room there. So it just gives you a little bit more room to actually, I want to know that when I cut the button hole open, my button's going to slide through it nicely. The other little thing with these machines, if you've got this style foot, is there's usually like a little lever that kind of like lives like up in the back here. And that might be hard to see, but it's like this little tab that you kind of like pulls all the way down, and it's really just meant for sewing the buttonhole. So if you have this style foot, you're going to have one of these little mechanisms that's going to pull down from the top of the machine down. So I'm going to just slide the buttonhole foot onto my machine, and it just kind of clicks into place. And then I'm just going to also, I like to thread the thread so it slides underneath the foot. So all my threads are under the foot. So I'm just threading it that way. So my foot's in place. And then, like I mentioned, this little tab, it's like this little black lever. It's meant to kind of sit in between, I might have to take this off to show you again, but this little spacing here in between these little tabs, this is what's going to sort of that's what's going to size the buttonhole. So when I'm pulling this little tab down, it kind of sits back behind the first one here. And then as I start to sew my buttonhole, what's going to happen is this is going to keep moving forward. As soon as that little tab hits the back end one, it's then going to signal to go backwards. So it's just going to tell the machine exactly how big we want the buttonhole to be. So that little tab that we slide down kind of slides back and forth in between here, helping the machine know what size the buttonhole should be. So we slide it down, it's going to sit here. Then as we sew, it's going to sew. As soon as it hits here, it's going to tell the machine to start going forward. So it's going to kind of do the buttonhole square by bouncing back and forth between these little tabs. So I'll just put this back on. Slide on my thread underneath. And so again, just that little tab is sort of sitting, that little button is kind of sitting in between. And then just gonna take my piece of fabric. So I've just got some plain fabric that I'm testing on, and generally speaking, when you're doing a buttonhole, you're gonna have at least 2 layers of fabric that you're sewing through. You will find that you do get a better looking buttonhole if you've also got a bit of interfacing. So usually, it is, and oftentimes, for the places that you are going to have buttons, like a placket, oftentimes it will tell you, or a cuff or something, it will tell you to have a little bit of interfacing in there. And it is helpful for buttonholes to have that little extra bit of stability so that they stay nice and flat. Sometimes, I mean, I have done buttonholes without them, but you will find kind of that the buttonhole can kind of crumple up a little bit. It's going to have a little bit too much tension. It's going to pull on the fabric. So I did put a bit of interfacing on this little sample so we get sort of a nice flat buttonhole. So I'm just gonna slide my fabric in. And so for this machine, I always forget, I think this one goes, it's gonna go backwards. So it's gonna go this way. So I'm gonna start from the bottom of where I want my buttonhole to be. And so normally you might have your buttonhole sort of marked, you know, if you were doing a shirt or something, you would have your placement marked. I'm just gonna kind of put it randomly in the middle of my fabric here. And then wherever you are, you're just gonna start. And so the nice thing about this machine and this particular buttonhole is once you've got the foot set up, and the foot is on the machine, and you actually select the buttonhole stitch. So on this machine, it's sort of the bottom corner button is my buttonhole stitch. And obviously that's usually pretty easy to see either the symbol or the number that relates. You can adjust the settings for the buttonhole if you need to in terms of like the width or the length of the stitch. Usually I'll do it as it is. And then if I look at the buttonhole sample that I've done, I may, you know, change make it a little bit more dense if that's what I want. But I'll usually kind of see what the machine setting looks like first, and then I'll make those adjustments without guessing. So once that's set up, then I'm just going to start stitching out my buttonhole. So as I start stitching, the machine is kind of coming forward. It's doing just a sort of a straight line on this one. And then as soon as it hits that back tab there, it's now starting to do my little bar tack all the way down. So it's now bar tacking from, it went up from the bottom up to the top, and now it's bar tacking all the way down to the bottom. As soon as it hits that little tab again, it moves over to doing the bottom of the bar tack and then starts to go up the right side. So now it's just bar tacking up the right side. And then as soon as it hits the top again, it's just going to kind of finish that top bar tack. And then it should just kind of stop. Oh, no, it's still got to come all the way down. Sorry. And now we're just bar tacking all the way down to the bottom. And then now it's just finishing that last stitch at the bottom, and then it kind of stops itself. So you really don't have to do a lot once this particular style foot is on and it's set up, and then you can just pull it off. So it looks pretty good. You can cut your tails. And so if this is not too bad, but I think, you know, if you wanted to, you could make this a little bit more dense. So with your stitch length on your machine, this machine is set at a 0.4, which is pretty tiny, but you might be able to go, yeah, I could even go down to 0.3. So I could kind of bring those stitches a little bit closer together if I wanted that a little bit more of a dense look. You could definitely adjust it to do it that way. Yeah, and then the nice thing is like what you would do is now I would check. So this was, you know, this is the button. Actually, it does look like it's got kind of a nice amount of space. So you would want to just double check it. And when I cut my buttonholes open, I will usually take a little pin and I'll put the pin across the top. And then I'll usually oftentimes just use a seam ripper. I do have a buttonhole cutter, but I usually just use a seam ripper. And you just kind of put your seam ripper in. And then when you slide forward, that pin is just going to not let you cut your buttonhole open. So I'm able to kind of slide all the way up to that pin. It doesn't let me go further. And then I'm able to check. So that's my good size. It's pretty nice. It's like not too tight, not too loose. It's kind of nicely snug in there. So I feel like that would be like a really good size for this particular button. And then now if I needed to make like 6 more, the foot is already set up for it. And so I can just repeat, place my foot and repeat and kind of do those buttonholes over and over again. So, these buttonhole feet are quite nice and they're pretty easy to use. You do just, the main thing that a lot of people get tripped up on is, just remembering to pull down this little back tab, because that's what kind of does all of the censoring. And if you don't have that, it doesn't do the right size. And so that's the one little trick on this style of buttonhole foot where, it gives you this sort of mechanical sensor where it's just kind of physically sensing the length of the buttonhole for you. So that is that style of buttonhole. I'm going to swap out my machine to show you the style of buttonhole that Brenda and Roxanne have. Real quick. Oops. Oh, yep, that didn't. Okay, so I wasn't too sure if we would have any super manual buttonhole folks with us tonight, but there is on the Bernina, there's a very manual style buttonhole foot that you can, some machines will have, but this one, I mean, this is the one that I have on my machine, the sort of the automatic one, and so this is the one I'm usually using, but the manual one is good in a pinch, and some of the models only come with that. So the this manual one also does have a measuring device on it, but it's not used in exactly the same way. So what I usually do, the way that I usually use this device here is I do use it to help me kind of determine the length of my buttonhole. So I'll just usually open it up. It's kind of got this little red arrow. I'll usually take my button and just kind of put it on the ruler of the foot, and then I'll usually kind of close that up. And then again, you do want to give yourself like 1 to 2 millimeters spacing, just so that you've got room for the button to fit through the hole. So I usually kind of open that up a little bit. So that's going to kind of give me the length that I want to do. You can do it by just, you can also do it manually. So if you don't want to use the measuring device on the foot, you could just use, a specific measurement on your fabric and then follow that instead of using the foot. I oftentimes use the foot, but either way will work. And then the foot just goes on the machine. And then I always just pull my thread under the foot so it's not going to tangle up. I put a variegated thread on my machine, on this machine, to show you what that looks like, because I like to do variegated buttonholes oftentimes. Kind of a fun thing to do, so got that on my machine. So for this machine, we are gonna press the buttonhole stitch, which is just the number 10 on this machine. Some of the models have a touch screen where you kind of deep dive into finding your buttonhole, but oftentimes it's the number 10. And on this machine, it's going to start from the top left corner and go down. Whereas on the one that we just did, it started from the bottom left corner and went up to start. So that's just important to know your machine's starting point so that you're placing your needle at the right spot and you're not doing it in the wrong way. So wherever you want to go, you're going to drop yourself down. The other little trick that I'll just mention on this machine, if you've got the sort of the CB style bobbin case, which is this metal bobbin case on your machine, Roxanne has a different bobbin case. On this bobbin case, you'll notice there is like a little in the little arm, there's like a little hole that's in that little arm there. This is the one time that you can thread your thread through this little hole. So this is a little trick that I do when I do buttonholes on this style of bobbin case. This adds like a little bit of extra tension to the bobbin. So it's just kind of, sorry, it's just kind of feeding through that little uh, that little hole through the arm on the bobbin case. And what that does is it just gives a little bit of extra tension and it kind of like pulls the top bead of the buttonhole a little bit tighter. So you just get kind of a little bit of a nicer rounded buttonhole. So that's just a little trick on this style of bobbin. A little finding place. And then on this machine, again, we're starting from the top left corner. This is sort of like a two-step, I'm gonna call this like a two-step buttonhole. So we're going to set ourselves up and then, or one step maybe, I guess. And then we just need to let the machine know, even though we've kind of ourselves determined how long the buttonhole is, it can actually sense where that arrow is. So we just have to tell the machine. So all that means is when I start stitching, it's gonna stitch and I'm just gonna watch the arrow sort of come closer to the red line. And as those two things meet up with each other, I'm just gonna press the reverse button one time really firmly. And that's gonna say this is how long the buttonhole is. And then the buttonhole will just finish after that. So this is also one of the times where I like to use, if you're on the Bernina, this little feature here, which is the start stop button. It's the button that's above the reverse button. So basically this is a button that where the machine is going to sew without you stepping on the pedal. And the buttonhole is one of the times where I really like to use this particular feature because you just don't have to step on the pedal and it just kind of, you're completing this sort of stitch formation that, you know, it will just stop itself. So I'll usually just put my speed slider down to really slow, just to kind of control the machine a little bit. And then you just press this really firmly. And so the machine is just going to start sewing on its own without me doing anything else. And it's going to start moving from the top down. Here you can kind of adjust the speed. You know, it's going very slow. I'll get it to go just a little bit faster, just whatever feels comfortable. And I'm watching as these like two red arrows and the line kind of meet up with each other. They're getting closer. As soon as I see that they line up, I'm just going to press the reverse button really quickly right now. And so as soon as I did that, the machine starts to go in the opposite direction. And then it's just going to finish the buttonhole out. So that was the only step that I really needed to do. And I'm just going to get it to go a little bit faster. And then it's just going to fully complete the buttonhole and it'll stop itself. So that's one of the reasons why I really like using the start stop button for buttonholes, because it just does it automatically. And so then the machine just stops itself. And then when you lift up, you can pull your, okay. I really like the variegated thread on a buttonhole. It just looks really cute. So you can just clip your threads there and back. And this is a really nice, like this is quite dense. I feel like the settings on that are pretty nice. It gives this, you know, I mean, this machine does a really nice buttonhole, but sometimes they're not as dense as that, but I think that looks really good. And with the interfacing, like it just feels like a nice tight buttonhole. So let's just see how we did. This one might be a little bit tighter than the one that we did before. Might still work, but it's going to be a bit tight, but I'll open it up and see. And just slide your seam ripper carefully through. So that's feeling pretty tight to me. Yeah. So like that doesn't, that is maybe not gonna be good for this button. You don't want to be stretching your buttonhole out every time you're trying to get something through it. So that is why we always do tests. So this, whatever I chose, was a little bit, I could go a little bit further, so I would definitely just do another one. And revisit just so that I get, the exact right length. So just kind of bump it up a tiny bit, do another one and just make sure that it's correct. The only other thing that I wanted to mention with, the buttonholes is you can, then seal them with like a bit of fray check. That's always a good idea. Just especially depending on the fabric. So the fray check is just like a clear glue that, you can use in a lot of situations. And this is sort of a good one where, you're so sliced through the fabric, it's a bit raw there. You can kind of snip off some of these loose threads, but then putting a bit of fray check is just going to help it to stay sealed, as it gets sort of worn and opened up, and it's just clear. So it's just going to soak in and hold the buttonhole nice and close over to them. That makes sense. Susan, do either of those, I mean, did the first one, relate to your machine?
Mine is very primitive in comparison. So it
Mhm.
goes through the 4 steps,
Okay.
and you have to measure out on the
Okay.
garment.
Yeah.
I was just looking at the manual. It looks like you have
Yeah.
to measure it out on the garment
Okay.
and eyeball it when you come to the end of one of the vertical parts in order
Yeah.
to do that horizontal tack. And I'm
Yeah.
recalling now trying to use, I did use it. It's a number of years ago, maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And each buttonhole was wonky, you know,
Okay.
one was different from the other. So I'm looking at the machines you're showing and I'm like, oh, maybe I should invest in a
Oh,
machine that does the
time for an upgrade.
same. Yeah, maybe a little upgrade for that.
I'm just curious, so like this is the manual foot for this machine. Does it just look like a regular presser foot, or is it more of a complex foot that you have? Do
It's very simple and it's plastic. It's
Okay,
a plastic foot and
okay,
it clips on, like you don't have, I don't have to change the shaft at all.
yeah,
It's
okay,
just a foot. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, so I'll just demonstrate this foot because this is the 4-step buttonhole foot.
Oh, perfect.
And
Yeah.
so it'll kind of maybe give just a general sense of the thing, the steps that you probably would be following. So this machine has, this automatic foot that you can get for it, which is lovely. But there are also, it also you can also get this manual foot, and some of the models just come with the manual foot. And also the manual foot can be good in certain situations where the automatic foot is a little bit cumbersome and bulky, and it doesn't behave as smoothly on some, some items and some placements of buttonholes where you're kind of really close to something that's bulky, like a collar or like a waistband. So this is kind of a nice, is also just the manual version. It's just kind of nice. So it's the little thing with this foot is it does, I'll just try to show you on the bottom, it does have just like this little groove, and those little grooves are meant for the bead that you're making. And so the bead of the buttonhole kind of slides in those, is going to be stitched into those little grooves, and that just helps to control that. So yeah, so with this style of buttonhole foot, you do want to have it sort of pre-marked on your fabric. So you would have the buttonhole length already predetermined and laid out. So I probably could go a little bit bigger. So I just kind of had put my button and marked it with a ruler. Probably should go a tiny bit bigger because that other one was too short. So I'm just gonna give myself a bit more of a line. Those two big generals. So I'll just make it just a tiny bit longer just to see. And so it's I'm just gonna clear this. So it's similarly, I'm just gonna turn this off and make sure I've got the right setting. So select my buttonhole foot. So from here, I'm just going to, again, I'm going to start at the top. So I'm just going to position myself at the top of my marking, lower my presser foot down. And then I'll usually just drop my needle in place. So it's kind of just hitting the top of that little T. So, I mean, for me, the tricky thing about this one is that you really have to pay attention. So you want to go a bit slower, and you're the one who has to kind of connect everything together. So this is the 4-step buttonhole where kind of every single step of the way, I'm going to tell the machine to start doing the next thing. So you don't want to overshoot your lines. And then you've got to make sure that as you connect things, you're staying sort of within the boundaries that you've set for yourself. So you do have to be a little bit more engaged when you're doing the 4-step and really pay attention. So I would just always go a little bit slower. So I'll definitely just use the pedal for this one, so I can control what's happening. So I'm going to just start stitching. Okay, so it's just going to start coming all the way down the left side. And I'll just keep doing that until I hit my very bottom marking that I made for myself. And then just like in the other buttonhole on the other foot, I'm just going to be pressing the reverse button. So just hit my bottom mark there. So I'm just going to press the reverse button one time, and that just kind of lets the machine know it should do the next thing. So now it's going up the right side. And I just got to carefully watch for that I'm not going to overshoot getting to the top here. So as soon as I'm right in line with my other stitching, I'm then going to press the reverse button again. And then it starts to do the top bar tack. So every step I'm kind of letting the machine know to move on to the next step. And so now it's coming back down. And so I'll just watch for that to line up at the bottom. So this is usually why they turn out a little bit wonky, is because oftentimes people just overshoot. And one of the reasons is because if you've got your foot on the pedal, you know, it's very easy for that to happen. And so a good trick, if you find that to be tricky, is when you get close enough, just do the last ones by hand. Like do the last couple stitches to get where you want to go by hand, instead of trying to, you know, play chicken with the foot. Just go a little bit, that just gets it a little bit more, gives you a little bit more control. So I'm just going really slowly. Yeah. Just a couple more stitches. Okay, so that looks good. And then I'm just going to press the reverse button again. And then that was the last bar tack. So. Very good. Actually, not that bad. Yeah, I find that with this foot, it's a nice foot to use, but you just have to be really focused when you do it. You got to be like really like in the zone, and going really, really slowly. So just if you don't have that much control, just I would just recommend doing it by hand. Does that seem similar, Susan?
Yeah, it's almost identical. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. That's good.
I do have a question though.
Right.
You're using seam ripper, but
Yeah.
you mentioned there's a buttonhole cutter. Is that like a chisel or is it a?
Yeah, it's basically like a flat chisel. I have one, but I'm for some reason missing my sewing kit. Roxanne definitely has one.
And then the other question I had was about the interfacing.
Mhm.
Do you try to, are you mindful about, you know, you're using dark fabric, dark interfacing, because you would see it on that cut edge of the buttonhole?
Yeah,
Or-
generally speaking, I mean, for the most part, you know, yes, for sure. I would definitely check your, you know, match your interfacing color so that it's not going to show through in a bad way. I mean, I definitely would, you know, if you're, I would oftentimes use like, you know, if I'm using navy or something really dark, I'm going to use that black interfacing. But for the most part, I think a lot of the things I work with are I'm just using a white interfacing because they're oftentimes more light colored, but this one probably had black. I probably used black on this one when I did the interfacing. It won't show too much, but it can make a difference. I think it makes some difference more the opposite way where you wouldn't want to have a dark interfacing on a light fabric. For sure. Any other buttonhole questions? Brenda?
Yeah, I guess I was wondering more like the front of a shirt. Is there a rule that you follow as to how far you space them apart? And then is there tricks like if you place the buttonholes wrong, sometimes you know you can get gapping at the bust? I was just wondering about those two questions.
Yeah, there is I think there's you know, I think there's some strategies in terms of like you can replace, I mean, a pattern is always going to tell you, you know, it's always going to give you the placement. But I know that some people will reposition the buttons according to, you know, what works better for them, because some people do get gaping and that is obviously super annoying. One of the tools that's really fun, I don't have it with me, but I'll post a photo, is like those expanding gauges, and they kind of measure equidistant your buttonhole placement, and that's a really nice tool. It's a very specific tool, but a very nice tool to have for that, where you can kind of just reposition it. And I think it's more just like determining, like, you know, if it's kind of that one button where you want to have it in a very specific spot and then repositioning away from that. So kind of finding out where's your ideal, you know, closure point, and then you can kind of like position the buttons away from the one that you know that you want to have, and it's a very specific spot. That's probably what I would recommend.
Okay.
And to be honest, like on a lot of patterns now, I actually sometimes will not do buttonholes where I know I'm not going to use them. So I very rarely button things like all the way up to the top. And so for me, anyways, I oftentimes don't actually do, you know, the very up top button hole
Yeah, the one on your
anymore. Like that collar one, I would never, you know, button my shirt all the way up like that. And so I just never even do that buttonhole anymore. Because also it's also a very tricky buttonhole to do. Like the buttonholes on those positions are always harrowing, I feel like, and they oftentimes go wrong. So it's kind of like skip it now, because it's not even going to do anything for me anyways. And when I finish the garment, so
Okay, yeah, thank you.
does that help? Okay. Kelly, how do you feel about buttonholes?
It came back to me watching you do it. I remember on the dress that you helped me make, I made some buttonholes with you.
Mhm.
And I just needed a little recap review. So that was great. Thank you.
Okay, good.
I forgot about pulling on my machine, I have to pull that little knob thing down.
Yes. That's
Thank
usually
you.
that's usually what goes wrong with that one. Okay, good. Well, just a quick little mini lesson on a Wednesday.
That was great. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I
Thank
hope
you.
it
That was
works out a good
awesome.
night. Good. Awesome. Well, try a buttonhole and let me know how it goes. I'd like
Okay.
to. Okay. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Good night.